Hi, everyone. Welcome to our Overview and Career Services webinar, where we will share a little bit about the SCM program, as well as a little bit of a deep dive into what career services we offer to our students and alumni. We're really excited to have so many of you joining us today. My name is Maren Axe. I am the Assistant Director for Academic Programs here at the MIT SCM program. And I'm joined today by my colleagues Justin and Len, who will also be presenting, as well as Kate Padilla, who will be working in the chat to answer questions. So Justin, Len, do you want to say hi?
Hey everyone, great to see you. Thrilled that you're interested in our program and looking forward to sharing with you about our career services offerings.
Hey everyone, thanks Maren. My name is Justin Snow, and after you hear a little bit of an overview, you'll hear from me later, and I'll chat a little bit more about what I do. Thanks for being here.
All right. We are going to be using the Q&A functionality during this webinar, so please submit your questions there. We will either answer them by typing out answers, or we will answer them live later on. So thank you so much for being engaged, and we're excited to get started. So here's a little bit about what we're going to talk about today. First, we're going to do an overview. Justin, if you can just go back one slide. We're going to do an overview of the program, just very brief overarching look at the program holistically. We're going to take a little bit of a closer look at what the MIT experience is like actually on campus here. And then, as I said, more of a deep dive into career services. And then we'll close with a few of our upcoming events. All right. SCM overview. So why would you consider the MIT SCM program? Well, we are only 10 months or 5 months away from work. We're a very quick program. That means that you can leave your job, come get your degree, and head back into the workforce in a short amount of time with maximum impact. We have comparable salary outcomes to top MBA programs. Our students are competitive across all major sectors that MBA programs are also competitive in. You can be OPT and STEM certified up to 3 years for U.S. work authorization for international students. This is specifically in the residential program. In the blended program, you're unfortunately not eligible for OPT. This is a cohort experience. So there are 40 residential and 40 blended students per year. That's about a maximum of 80 students. That forms a really close-knit community and really builds your supply chain network. We take a study trek every year with our students to expand their horizons. And this year, we're proud to be going to Panama and Seattle. We're also part of MIT's Center for Transportation and Logistics. Our program kind of sits within the Center for Transportation and Logistics, and our students work closely with the researchers and faculty that are affiliated with the center. There's research is focused on conquering real-world supply chain challenges, and they do outreach by working with corporate partners to help sponsor that research and capstone projects. And then the education is the most important part of what we do. Our students work directly with researchers and industry experts on complex and challenging problems in all aspects of supply chain management. So you would be contributing to our mission by joining our program. We have 2 different pathways, as I've mentioned briefly, the residential pathway and the blended pathway. So the residential pathway is 10 months on campus. This is kind of designed for people in their early career supply chain professionals who are looking to really advance and specialize in supply chain management. And there's custom career development and recruiting opportunities, which I mentioned we're going to talk more about. And then you'll be eligible for OPT and STEM if you're an international student looking to work in the US. The blended program is developed for those who have a little bit more years work experience and maybe don't want to take maybe quite as much time away from their job. This pathway is open to MicroMasters credential holders. And once you have that credential, you're eligible to apply to the blended program, and you are on campus from January to May. You earn the exact same degree as a residential student in half the time. This is really a great option for mid-career professionals who wish to remain with their employer. So this is the program timeline for the residential students. In August, you have recruiting prep, capstone intros, and you start to prepare your analytics. In September, you start your core classes. You have some career coaching as well as fall recruiting, and then you're working on your capstone project. In IAP, which is Independent Activities Period here at MIT, it's the month of January. It's a 3-week period during which you'll participate in a large conference, a global conference with other students from all over the world who are also studying supply chain management. In the spring term, you take more classes. We go on our annual study trek. You'll have continued career coaching, recruiting, and you'll finish up your capstone project. And then you graduate in May. The blended timeline is slightly different because you're not on campus until January. So you take the MicroMasters and you finish and get your credential before you apply to the program. Once you apply, you are accepted, and then you begin pre-work remotely in the fall. You work on Python, you work on analytical materials, and you begin your capstone project remotely while you're still working full-time and preparing to come to campus. Then you arrive on campus in January, and then your timeline is exactly the same as the residential students. You are preparing for classes. You are doing the Scale Network conference where you're, again, connecting with students from all over the world in supply chain management. And then you join spring term where you are a full-time MIT student, taking classes, going on the study track, participating in career coaching and recruiting, and finishing up your capstone before you graduate in May with the same degree. So we offer 2 degree options. Justin, you can just click all the way through on this slide. There is the Master of Applied Science, Master of Engineering, and then so these are the 2 degrees that are available to you. Most of our students go with the Master of Applied Science. Justin, if you just click once more, this is the project that requires a capstone project, whereas the Masters of Engineering is more research-based and requires a thesis. The difference between these 2 degrees is not too much. It's just that a thesis is really meant for those who are planning to go on to a PhD and who want to contribute in research. Whereas a capstone is applied learning, where you're taking current research and applying it to a problem for a sponsor now. The majority of our students go with the Masters of Applied Science. And if you choose to go the Masters of Engineering route, that's a conversation you can have specifically with the program team as you prepare to matriculate. So the MIT experience. These are photos of our students, actual photos of our students having lots of fun, but the MIT experience is very unique, and we'll talk about why. So these are photos from our study track. I do think that we're one of the few programs that offers this to their students. We really feel it's important for cohort bonding and also just to kind of get a global perspective to learn about supply chain in a different area. So we take our students to Panama and we take them to either San Francisco or Seattle. This year it's Seattle, last year it was San Francisco. We change it up because we want to go where our connections are. So these photos are from last year where we were in Panama. You can see we mix in fun with also logistics. So we are visiting a warehouse, and also we went on a wildlife tour as well. And you can see us in the boat there. And then at MIT itself, you have a lot of opportunities to connect and engage. Our students are really interested in building their community, so they have lots of cultural events that they put together themselves. One of the unique things about MIT is that you can sign up for sailing. This year, I think at least half of our students have gotten sailing certified at MIT, and they spent a lot of time out on the water. This is something that's completely open to you as an MIT student. There are many events at MIT as well. Obviously, our students have gone ice skating, and they've connected with Tim the beaver, which is our MIT mascot. There's also a lot of student clubs and activities. Sorry, I should have mentioned that as well. And those are open to you. They're all open throughout campus. Many of our students join the clubs and activities that are available at Sloan, which is very close nearby to us, and that is MIT's business school. So there are entrepreneurial clubs or finance clubs or tech clubs, whatever you're interested in, I'm sure you can find a community here at MIT.
Great. Thanks, Maren. So welcome, everyone. As Maren said, I'm here to chat with you about career services and our offerings for our students, whether you're interested in the residential program or the blended program. I've been doing this for more than 20 years. I've been working with graduate students, and I have to say, this is the best program I could ever have imagined. And I attribute it to what you saw in the slide earlier, the MIT experience. When students leave this program, the sentiment is they don't want to leave. It was so enjoyable. It was so transformational. And I think one of the elements that contributes to that is the whole issue of employability. That concern that every applicant has is just taken off the table. I tell students the moment they arrive, just employability is for the most part not a concern. Our focus is to help you tell your story, because each of you has a very powerful story to tell, and that is what makes the difference. Not getting access to recruiters, because we have access to amazing recruiters. We have access to amazing alumni. When I think about what distinguishes our program, it's the high touch approach that Justin and I take working with each of you. We work with you one-on-one from the moment you receive our letter of acceptance forever. I mean, when alums are changing jobs and looking to make connections in different industries, they reach back to us to say, listen, you helped me 3 or 4 years ago. I'm in a new situation, would love to connect, and we do that. So it's really a lifetime of career services that we provide. And I will tell you that the high touch approach that we take towards supporting you pays dividends after you graduate. And that's the reason it's self-perpetuating. Everyone we helped so much over the last 8 years has now come back to say, I have an opening for someone from the class of 2025. I want to come in and speak to the class of 2025 and so forth. So it just pays forward whatever we're contributing to the students while they're here. And it gives us a great deal of satisfaction to be doing it. So the other factor that I want to take into consideration here is the alumni support from this program is by far the best out there. I would put it up against any top tier MBA program out there. Every time Justin and I pick up the phone to make a connection, to plan a visit, to invite someone in to speak, they jump at the chance. So they feel so good about this experience. I'm going to take a break right here. I want to introduce my colleague Justin as well to share his perspective as a career advisor to you.
Thanks, Len. Like I said earlier, my name is Justin Snow. As Len mentioned, both of us have worked for the SCM program for about 8 years. So we've been able to develop, these strong connections with the alumni that we've directly worked with as students. Of course, the program has been around for over 25 years. And then the broader MIT community has thousands of alumni. So there's many layers to the network and the community that you would be joining if you were to come and be an SCM student with us. Piggybacking off what Len said about himself, I have worked in student services, counseling for many years. I've been specifically with the SCM program for about 8 years. It really is a family, and I've moved into the role working in employer relations, alumni relations, career services, because of the relationships that I've been able to develop in the greater supply chain network, especially obviously within the MIT subset of that. So without further delay, we'll probably move into our slide deck so we can talk more specifically.
Yeah, sure. So, I mentioned earlier that employability is really not the concern when you're coming out of our program. It's really, as I say here, who do you wish to become? Like, what's important to you? What field, what function, what industry, what balance between work and life? These are the things that we want you to consider, because you will have choices. You will have opportunities to sort of steer your career to support the whole you. And our first bullet point I mentioned is this extensive coaching. We're going to meet you. We're going to connect with you way before you arrive to understand who you are, where you're going, how you found our program, what mutual connections we may have, and who we think you should be in touch with. And we'll make those introductions. We'll help you explore to wherever you're at in your career development process. There are some students that say, I'm pretty good. I'm going back to my company. Not too worried about recruiting. Others are rather anxious about it coming into a graduate program, and everything in between. So regardless of where you're at, you can count on us to help connect you with others, to help connect you with employers, with alumni, with resources to help you tell your story. Expert advice. We're not going to claim that we're supply chain experts, but we have access to supply chain experts. These are the alums that we're bringing into the program for coffee chats, for information sessions, for sort of industry overviews, for one-on-one alumni panels. Like every week we have an activity, an event, several, frankly, during the peak season when alums are coming back to share their story. So even if you're in a position right now where you don't know where you want to go in supply chain, we're going to help you figure that out. And in terms of resources, you have not just access to our connections, but also to the broader MIT resources, which are, as you can imagine, incredible. They're just so extensive. The organizations from around the globe that are coming here to recruit, you have access to those. And frankly, they're so vast, it's hard to keep track of them. Access to an array of leading employers. You've probably been on our site, you've seen our outcomes reports. You know that we have deep connections with many companies, particularly the companies where we have the deepest connections are those that seem to be the companies that students want when they're coming into the program. So big tech, certainly strong consulting, and top industrial players. So depending upon the cyclicality of the economy, it's going to vary year to year which companies are really strong. 2 years ago, Walmart and Tesla were enormously strong. Amazon wasn't. This past year, Amazon is super strong, Tesla not so much. So it varies by sector and company specific each year, but the connections that we have really mitigate that. And if you were interested in a particular organization, and that's not in an economic cycle when they're recruiting, our alums, we have 120 plus supply chain alums in supply chain roles at Amazon. Like we're planning a trek out there in March. They're so eager to help us show us the organization and lead tours and connect with one-on-one with students. It's so gratifying to know that we have this resource. And obviously, the broader MIT alumni network is at your disposal as well as a student and as a graduate.
Thanks, Len. I'll just add, Len and I, we work specifically for the supply chain program. We are liaisons in a way to all the resources related to career services that exist in the greater MIT community. So there's a career services office. There are countless events and company engagements, outside of what we plan. So there's so much going on at MIT, and because our programs are condensed, our staff is really here to help you make the most of it. So we'll move on to go over some of those outcomes that Len mentioned.
Yeah, sure. And I just want to pop out a second here because I see a question that it's much easier for me to answer it live than it is to type it out, but it is around industrial placements for students who might be interested in the blended program. And I'm just looking over sort of our blended results in the past, and some of the industrial companies were Cummins, Cargill, Boeing, Bayer, GE Vernova, Northrop Grumman, as an example of industrial companies that have hired blended students. I will tell you, in general, the students in the blended program, about 50% of them are returning to their employer. They're pretty set on that because they tend to have more experience than those students within the residential program. Students in the residential program are very heavily drawn to big tech and to big consulting. So that's often reflected in our results. And I know we're talking a lot about sort of, we're not distinguishing between sort of the blended career outcomes or the residential career outcomes. The outcomes that we're sharing here are residential, but we also have equally strong blended results. The challenge is the half or 3/4 of the blended program, if not more, sometimes 80% of the blended program, those students are returning to their home countries. So we're seeing very positive results in terms of those that are getting promoted, being recognized by their employers. But the quantitative results that we're sharing here today are for the residential program because so many blended students return to their previous employer. So with that, just want to touch on some of our more, I would say the quantitative aspects of the outcomes that are most relevant to applicants. Average salary. We saw a bit of a dip this past year from prior years. I think the year prior it was something like 140, and largely driven to the organizations that students are seeking employment with. I would say it was a more of a challenging year. Of all the past 8 years, the class of 24, it was more challenging. When we normally have 97% of students who have accepted an offer by graduation, it took longer. It was 5 months this past year. And there was just a much greater degree of hesitancy in terms of fall recruiting last year. We saw it recover this fall, which I'm very pleased about, but that wasn't the case in fall of 2023. In most years, I want to say it's 97% going back at least the last 5 years, 97% of students secured a position in the US. This past year, we had 5 students who found employment outside the US. In some cases, it was for personal reasons, but our goal is if anyone who wants to work in the US will 100% will find that opportunity. So, like I said, this year was a little bit more challenging, but I'm encouraged based on the activity so far this fall. Some more detail here around base pay ranges, but also some of the employers from the class of 2024. The bolded are those that had multiple offers, and these are where we have the deepest relationships. These are the organizations that come back year after year to recruit. They change sort of every year. We'll see some drop out, others come in, but our goal, we're a class of 40 residential students and maybe 12 to 15 from the blended program that are US citizens and seek to work in the US. So that's the big difference. If you're in the blended program and you're an international student, you will not have OPT, you will not be eligible to work in the US. So you have to return home. But if you're a US student in the blended cohort and all of the students in the residential cohort are eligible to work in the US. So this data reflects that. So we're pretty pleased with these results. Again, this is where we have the deepest connections with the Walmarts and Microsofts and Apple, Amazon, Tesla, GE, Google, McKinsey, but they just vary year to year. We really focus very heavily on capturing data. So I'm pretty pleased that the percentage of students who provide employment compensation is usually over 90%. This year it's right around 90%. But I think, as you're looking at graduate programs, tease apart the data. How many students are responding to the outcome surveys? Because that dictates the numbers that you're going to see here. So we're pretty pleased with the response rate, which is an important consideration, but also the fact that these signing bonus numbers hold true year over year. They do dictate. There is a higher degree of fluctuation, I will say, when it comes to equity, because in years like 2022, when consulting was really strong, consulting firms are not offering equity. So if a third of your class is going into consulting, then only 2/3 are going to be receiving a signing bonus. So something to take into account. The tech companies generally are very, very generous with signing bonuses, competitive with the top MBA programs. And equity is also consistent with top MBA programs. And when Amazon hires, they're not distinguishing between a Sloan MBA or a supply chain MIT graduate. It's comparable. So, much of the employment outcomes that we present really reflect the exact choices that previous class made. So that's something to, to be aware of.
Thanks, Len. So on this slide, we have some more granular job titles that specifically students graduating from the residential program obtained recently. And as you can see, half of them have the senior in front of, the function. I think one of the benefits and offerings from the experience of going to graduate school, especially our program, is learning more about the supply chain industry in general. Obviously, it's a large umbrella and there's so many different facets depending on the industry, the functional role. And so a lot of students come in, knowing their more specific niche area that they have experience in, but they're looking to learn more about what opportunities are out there. And we help them explore that. Again, whether it's a specific function, industry, and we can look at on paper what a particular student has done coming into the program and make recommendations about this would make sense for your career trajectory and your goals. I don't know, Len, if you had anything else to add.
It's a lot easier to change functions if you're staying in the same industry. A lot easier to change industries if you're staying in the same function. If you're trying to change both function and industry, it's harder. No surprise, it's going to take longer. So be aware. I was thinking about a couple of observations that I've become aware of that they seem to recur year after year. Companies value quantitative skills. Students who have demonstrated strong quantitative acumen that's reflected in their experiences, they're going to get noticed. Experience matters. The quality of the accomplishments that are reflected on your resume based on your work experience, that makes a difference. They're clearly looking for strong accomplishments and leadership skills. And then lastly, functional expertise. For someone who's hopped around different functions, you'll want to reflect the function where you have the greatest degree of understanding and interest, because companies, they have roles to fill and they're looking for someone to fill the role. So I would say quant skills, general overall impressive experience coupled with functional expertise are drivers that dictate the difference between maybe an accelerated job search and one that's going to take a little bit longer. I see there's a lot of questions in the chat. We can get to those, but Justin, feel free to jump on some of these of our employers.
Sure. Yes, I know Maren and Kate have been working behind the scenes to answer questions. I think we have a few more slides. Maren will wrap up, and then hopefully we'll get to all the questions. We have this more visually pleasing slide with the different logos of employers, again, of recent students. So I think, many students coming into the program are attracted to some of these, global companies that are big tech, big names, Amazon, Apple, Microsoft, and many students are great fits for those. We have strong alumni bases in all these companies, but you may see some other companies on here that you may have not heard of, or may have not considered as an option for you. And again, that's kind of what Len and I are here for, is to try and work with students to find what might be the best fit, and ask questions about work-life balance, and figure out what direction the student should go. And some people, they come in, they have an exact idea of what they want, and others, they don't know, and that's okay.
Yeah, I would say we're we're pretty tuned into the market as well. So in the past 18 months or so, students with sourcing experience, there's demand for that. And that's the reason why Inverto has been reaching out to us in Walmart, looking for talented sourcing expertise. Kroger's a new relationship for us. They started as a capstone and they hired two of our arguably top 1 and 2 quantitative students last year for amazing roles, reporting directly into the CEO. We have a great alum, she's amazing, who's the chief of staff to the chief supply chain officer of GE Vernova. As you know, or you may not know, but last April they spun off of GE. They became a public company, and they're not even a year old, but they were in last week to visit us, but they hosted us. The CEO spoke for 45 minutes at their office down the street in Cambridge. It's their new US headquarters. So we just have amazing relationships through our alumni and through the Center for Transportation and Logistics, which is our the entity within which we operate, just globally recognized in supply chain. So these companies are coming into us every single week. So the connections we have are enormous. And that's why I can speak so confidently about our career outcomes and our ability to help you not just tell your story, but also guide you in your path.
So this is the final slide. I did notice this is one of the questions that just came in. So hopefully this will address that. The question is, do we provide any pre-admission resume review, LinkedIn advice? Typically, no, but we did want to touch on it, given that this is admissions webinar. So we don't have a set format or length for the resume that you would submit with an application, but we do have some recommendations. So typically students, again, falling in this 3 to 7 year work experience, a 1-page resume is sufficient and also ideal, because it guides you to highlight your most significant accomplishments and achievements. So, when we on the admissions committee are looking at the resumes, we want to see these items that are listed towards the bottom of the page: process improvements, technical skills, leadership experience, interpersonal and communication skills. These are the types of things we're looking for, potential as well, so that your time here as a student, we can help grow those items, and we know that when you go to interview, you will be of interest to the employers and the types of positions that they come to recruit from our program for. Again, as far as the admissions aspect, we don't have too much more guidance, but I will say, once students do arrive, and even before arrival, we begin to work with students to really hone in on very specific resume review, resume editing, job interview, mock interviews. So we really do focus on all the aspects from application through the interview process in helping students one-on-one with all these materials. Len, I don't know if you have any final thoughts to add before we hand it back to Maren.
Yeah, no, I was just typing some answers here. Send us a professional resume that's reflective of your accomplishments, where you're quantifying your achievements. That tells a story. I want to look at a resume and I want to be able to get a sense of what this person has done and what their strengths are. So spend some time crafting a professional resume, because we look very carefully at that as part of the applications package, because we want to ensure that you're going to be successful when you leave the program. So obviously, when you're here, we work extensively with you to again, I'll say, to help you tell your story, whether that begins with self-assessment, it moves through the toolkit of resume, LinkedIn's, cover letters, thank you notes, to negotiations of salary. So every student in the program has many individual connections with both Justin and I throughout the year.
All right, so I'll hand it back to Maren to just wrap things up.
All right, so I'm going to quickly wrap things up, and then there are a few questions in the chat that I'd like to answer live. So coming up, we have some deadlines. Some of you are already aware. We had our first round 1 deadline, and decisions have already gone out for SCMR. That was on November 1st, so that has already passed. Upcoming SCMB deadline, the first one for our blended pathway, is January 10th. And then round 2 for the residential pathway is January 31st, followed by round 3 on March 28th. And then the other date for SCMB is not until June. This is specifically set so that it's after the CFX exam in May, so that any fresh credential holders have the opportunity to apply to our program. We also have some upcoming events. We're doing another admissions webinar similar to this one, although the content will be very similar to what we had in the fall if you have already attended that one. Just an overview of our program that will be in January. And then we are hosting a preview day on campus on February 21st. This is primarily for students that are interested in the residential program option. So if you would like more details, you can check out our website. It is ctl.mit.edu/events. And Kate can drop that link in the chat. Okay. Thank you so much. We have a few questions, so let's dive in. So I guess the first question that we have is about at what point do our students start engaging with career services? Do they start engaging as admins? Do they start engaging as current students? At what point do they engage, and how long does that engagement last?
Well, I can start. So given the condensed format of the program, we do start engaging with admitted students via email and via in a way, smaller internal webinars, over the summer prior to entry for the residential. So again, we'll get into some of the more specific tools and offerings that we have students engage with in the first few months to get their resume up to speed. We'll also offer one-on-one meetings virtually with myself and Len before arrival on campus. And essentially that is mirrored just a few months later for the blended group. So, once the residential kind of gets settled and they're on their way, we'll start engaging with the blended group. Again, specifically, we're talking about career services. Maren and Kate and their team, will be engaging before that. Len, I don't know if you have any other.
Yeah, I mean, I would add, Justin, that we have companies that want resume books unusually early. We can't get them to them in July, but certainly end of August is reasonable, because that's how much time we want to spend making sure they're truly reflective of the capabilities of each class. And obviously, we don't really begin to even connect with you until just after graduation, maybe sometimes before graduation of the prior year. So, it's as soon as you're admitted into the program, we want to begin to get to know you, and we try to pace it, because obviously we're working with the class that's just graduating, but it happens way before you arrive on campus. So by then we know you pretty well when you show up for orientation.
Right. We have another question. Does the resume need to match the format you shared exactly, or is it more of a general suggestion?
Generally, I would say generally. But the important thing is, stylistically, everyone has a different approach, but I'm not interested in seeing photos or personal information. I'm really interested in your professional accomplishments. Even less interested in sort of the activities that occurred many years ago. It's really what's occurred professionally in the last 5 years that you feel is truly going to make a difference in the eyes of an employer. Like that's going to be important to us when I review your resume. And those are going to be the same things I address when I work with you one-on-one to polish your resume.
Yeah, just to add a little bit more, I mean, specifically with the sections and the titles, and we see, a broad spectrum from the standpoint of resumes for applying to the program. If you want to kind of get a head start, that's kind of the direction we head in with the admitted students. So can't hurt.
Okay, I think that there are no other questions about career development at this time. I want to thank everybody for being so engaged in our session. It's been really wonderful chatting with all of you. Kate and I will stick around and type answers to some of these last lingering questions that we have here. So please get them in if you'd like. But if there are no further questions about career services at this point, we will end the session and everybody can have a little bit of time back.
Great. Thanks, Maren. And to everyone on the call, this is an amazing program. This will change your life. So I hope you apply.
Yes, thank you so much to everyone. And it was great to meet all of you. Good luck with your applications.
Thanks, everyone.